The United States and Britain have closed their embassies in the Yemeni capital of Sanaa, citing security threats from an al-Qaeda group. On Sunday, Deputy National Security Advisor John Brennan told NBC's Meet the Press that, quote, there are indications that al-Qaeda is planning an attack against a target in Sanaa. When asked whether U.S. military action was possible in Yemen, Brennan said, quote, everything is possible.
Everything is possible as far as our cooperation with the Yemeni government. We want to make sure that the Yemenis have what they need to thwart these threats.
On Saturday, President Obama connected the foiled Christmas Day attack on the Detroit-bound flight to al-Qaeda in Yemen.
We're learning more about the suspect. We know that he traveled to Yemen, a country grappling with crushing poverty and deadly insurgencies. It appears that he joined an affiliate of al-Qaeda, and that this group, al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, trained him, equipped him with those explosives, and directed him to attack that plane headed for America. This is not the first time this group has targeted us. In recent years, they've bombed Yemeni government facilities and Western hotels, restaurants and embassies, including our embassy in 2008, killing one American. So as president, I've made it a priority to strengthen our partnership with the Yemeni government, training and equipping their security forces, sharing intelligence, and working with them to strike al-Qaeda terrorists.
Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Gordon Brown described Yemen as a, quote, regional and global threat and is calling for an emergency high-level international meeting on Yemen at the end of this month. He spoke to Andrew Marr of the BBC Sunday.
I think we've got to also get back to the source of this, and that is Yemen, Somalia, Pakistan. We've got to recognise that we've got a group of young people.
Well, for more on Yemen and American and British reaction to the alleged terror threat from there, I'm joined now on the line from Britain by veteran journalist and author Patrick Cockburn. He's the Middle East correspondent for the Independent newspaper who's reported from Yemen and is covering the latest news. We're also joined on the line from Sanaa, the capital of Yemen, by Michael Horton, a freelance journalist who's based in Yemen. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Patrick Cockburn, let's begin with you. Your article says that, well, the U.S. and the Western countries should watch out. Why?
Well, Yemen's an extraordinarily dangerous country. It's really an Arab version of Afghanistan. The central government is very weak. There are multiple insurgencies in the country. The central government may well want to link them all to al-Qaeda in order to get U.S. and British support. But in fact, these insurgencies have very different origins. I think that if you were to draw up a list of countries that it's a really bad idea to get involved with, I think in the Middle East or anywhere else in the world, I think Iraq, Afghanistan, Lebanon, and Yemen would be topping that list.
Can you talk about what's been happening in Yemen over the last few years? You go through some of the examples in one of your pieces where you talk about two vehicles packed with explosives driven by suicide bombers in September 2008, where 19 people were killed, one an American woman, and other situations, Patrick.
Sure, yes. I mean, this was an attack on the American embassy. I haven't been inside it. It's built like a sort of a bunker in World War II. It's a pretty gloomy building, but it's designed primarily for defense. There have been a series of attacks on the U.S. embassy, on the British embassy. But Yemen in general is a very violent place. The roads are often cut. There's an insurgency by the Shia in the north of the country on the Saudi border, in which Saudi Arabia has become involved in that conflict. There's secessionism in the south around Aden. Yemen was only united in 1990, and there was a civil war in 1994. It's a very tribal country. The north of the country also is full of mountains and villages clinging to the sides of mountains with long terraces. It's perfect guerrilla territory. There's a long tradition of weak government, almost everybody is armed. That said, I don't know how anybody has worked this out, that there are 60 million weapons in Yemen for 22 million people. But it's not a place that any outside power is likely to come away with without suffering severe damage and heavy casualties.
It was President Obama who said he's going to stop using the term war on terror, and yet that just seems to have been ratcheted up now.
Yes, it does. What I find extraordinary is, that we have a sort of repeat of the situation that we had in Afghanistan and in Iraq. And also, the real strength of al-Qaeda is that a quite small incident, that a botched attempt by a Nigerian student briefly in Yemen to blow up a plane can then precipitate a whole change in international relations and greater U.S. support for the Yemeni government, greater involvement in a really difficult country. This seems to me walking straight into a sort of al-Qaeda trap. At the time of 9/11, al-Qaeda quite openly said that their hope was to entrap the U.S. into ground wars in Muslim countries, and that seems to be exactly what's happening.
We're also joined by Michael Horton from Sanaa, the capital of Yemen. Talk about the atmosphere on the ground right now, Michael.
Well, there's a great deal of fear and despair. A lot of the Yemenis I've spoken with have expressed great fear over regarding what America intends to do here. Many of them fear that the U.S. wants to turn this into Afghanistan, and they stress over and over that it is certainly not Afghanistan, not Pakistan. While there are some similarities, the kind of conservatism that is found here is quite different.
And the response in Sanaa to what happened on Christmas Day, the attempted bombing, and President Obama this weekend linking it to al-Qaeda in Yemen and the Arabian Peninsula, Michael?
Again, there's just been a great deal of fear over what America actually intends to do here. I agree with much of what Patrick is saying. I mean, the one way to unite this country is any overt action by the U.S. Yemen has a long history of fighting against any outside force going back to even Roman times. And as he was saying, the country is ideal terrain for asymmetric warfare. So, I mean, if the U.S. were foolish enough to get involved here, it has the potential to make the war in Afghanistan seem like a tea party.
Michael Horton, the CENTCOM commander, David Petraeus, went to Yemen over the weekend and met with the president. Can you talk about the significance of this? He promised that the U.S. would double the counterterrorism budget to Yemen. How closely does the Yemeni and U.S. governments work together?
Well, I mean, the Yemeni government has actually somewhat, has had a difficult time actually working with the U.S. and their efforts at combating al-Qaeda are certainly mixed. I mean, there have been a number of kind of mass prisoner escapes from supposedly high-security prisons in the past. And, this upsurge in al-Qaeda activity coincides with, increased fragility of the Saleh government. So there's a real danger that al-Qaeda will be linked to a number of the separatist and insurgent movements in Yemen, which could then push them to actually join with al-Qaeda, even though many of them are now opposed to al-Qaeda.